Hey, Fedheads. Welcome to another episode of Sharing Our Pairings. This is episode 33, Pairing Cocktails 2.0, because we already did a Cocktails 1.0. Today we'll be pairing with some Nomad cigars, specifically the S-307. Thanks very much for tuning in live, or if you're listening via podcast, thanks very much for tuning in podcast. Of course, you can listen to our show on cigarfederation.com. You can listen to it on YouTube if you want to check out the video, or if you're listening to podcasts, you can listen through iTunes or any podcast app on Windows Phone, your computer, or even Android. I'm your host, John the Cigar Surgeon. Today we're talking about cocktails. I'm here and joined, as always, with the new and improved, new fancy schmancy laptop, Robbie Rass. Rob, what is going on?
It's fun. I get the new laptop and now we've got all these open containers everywhere. I'm tempting fate, my friend.
Danger, Will Robinson, danger.
Yeah, exactly. I love there's absolutely no excuses for you to not listen to our show spiel at the beginning of every show.
Is it that subtle?
Well, if you don't listen to it here, you could listen to it here, or here, or here, or here. Even if you're 85, you can figure out how to listen to it. No, we're worldwide, baby. There's a way for everybody to listen. Now, I'd be curious to see. I know we've got podcast listeners in other countries. If our show gets translated somehow, because I don't do that, obviously. I don't speak German, but there's people in Germany watching, so I'd be curious to hear us in German.
Guten Nacht to all our German listeners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know how to say anything in German, so I'm not even going to try.
Yeah, I took German in university, but I don't know that I retained a lot of German. The only language I'm currently working on, of course, is Spanish, because I keep going to Nicaragua and Cuba, and I feel like it's probably appropriate for me to learn the language of the people that I'm visiting, and using their services and such, etc.
You're visiting on a regular basis, so absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I'm excited. I'm ready to go, man. We've got some serious drinking to do.
Hell yeah. I mean, the interesting thing about cocktails, of course, unlike, I know we've drank some pretty serious beers, and I know we've drank some pretty serious whiskey, but, most of these cocktails, like when I was searching for cocktail recipes, some of these cocktails come in at like 3 to 5 ounces worth of booze. And I'm like, okay,
yeah, baby.
I don't know if that's responsible to do 3 of those on air, partially because, I have a responsibility to the listeners to not be incoherently drunk, and 2, because it doesn't really give a sense of responsibility to our listeners to pair responsibly. So I kind of tried to find stuff that wasn't, 18 types of liquor, but, we'll talk about our pairings as we go. How'd you end up?
I didn't really, I take no responsibility whatsoever. So it's your show, man. You're responsible. I just show up. So if I get gooned, as you say, as your people say, it's on you. You have to reel me back in. But no, I do like the cocktails, and I feel like I've found a nice mix. I mean, we focused on aged rum and bourbon. I'm only doing one bourbon cocktail, and I think you're doing one as well. Or are you doing 2?
I kind of did a bit of and I'll talk about my cocktails as I go on, but I kind of did some weird changes to some classic cocktails, and then a cocktail which almost is like a dessert cocktail. So, but I think first what I'll talk about maybe is the Nomad cigar, because we've had Fred on Cigar Chat a bunch of times. Fred's a really good guy. We've hung out with him at IPCPR. I had the great fortune of going out to not Tampa, but Orlando.
Miami?
There we go. Orlando. So I've been out to Orlando a couple times now, and the last time I was out to Orlando, I got to sit down and do a bit of drinking and a bit of smoking with Fred. Super good guy. I mean, Fred pretty well. Fred's one of the great guys in the industry, and his cigars tend to hit the top of my review charts, not because Fred pays me, although, hey, that'd be nice.
But I'm down.
But I'm not saying I'm out, but no, he doesn't pay for reviews. He only gets honest reviews, and he gets top marks, and he's gotten top marks the last 3 years. Every single product he's released, he's gotten top marks, and the cigar we're reviewing today is no exception. The S-307, and I kind of opted to go. I was thinking we should go with the S-307 because it's still a current production cigar. You know, he actually came out with 3 Vitolas originally, and now they've expanded it to a Corona and a Gran Toro, which I like the Corona size. He was nice enough actually to bomb me when I went down to Orlando, because that's the kind of guy he is. So this Toro that I'm smoking is actually from Fred. Been sitting in my humidor, kind of waiting for this opportunity. Yeah, I think, what can I say? The S-307, it's a great cigar. Came out in 2013. It's pretty inexpensive for what it is. I mean, you know, this is a nice cigar. It's well made. It's got a great band. It's quality construction. It's a box press. And it's still in the SigFed store for $7.20, which that's really good for a boutique cigar.
This sounds very salesy.
Right?
Let's take a moment to let everybody know that neither John nor I have any interest in the SigFed store. So if you want to buy there, that's great. But I didn't realize that this cigar was that cheap. And I'm looking back, and I know that I don't think I've smoked this one before.
You know what's weird is I don't think I've smoked this one either. And I was going through my review book because I wanted to see what my review notes were, and I could not find anything on the S-307. I thought, I swear I've smoked everything Fred has put out. How could I have not smoked the S-307? I feel like maybe what I did is I went to a HERF, smoked an S-307, probably smoked a bunch of S-307s, and never bothered to jot my notes down.
Yeah, I'm looking back through, and the one that we did last year was the C276. And very similar looking cigars, and I'd have to pull up the specs on them to see how similar they are. But you and I both enjoyed that cigar. I liked the C276 a little bit better than you did. But I think this is the first time that I've smoked this one ever. I'm kind of surprised that I had one, to be honest. I know we didn't. This was a couple of years ago. This might be from IPCPR 2 years ago.
Wow.
Because I know someone reviewed it, but I don't think it was me.
I think it was Logie Bear, the MFNCO. And by the way, congratulations to Logan on the 1-year anniversary of buying out the store. Or buying out the website.
The website, yeah. How many people saw that in their Facebook feed this morning and thought, "Wow, he sold it"? I did.
Yeah. In retrospect, when I bumped it, because you know Facebook has this really, and we're getting off topic, but whatever, it's my show. Facebook has this thing which I kind of like, which is like looking back 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, and it popped up first thing this morning, and I'm like, oh yeah, man, has it been a year already since Logan bought the store out, or I keep saying store, bought the website out, which was a great move and allowed us to do a lot of stuff, and I'm like, you know, I should bump this because this is pretty awesome, and of course, you know, not thinking, I bumped it, and immediately everyone's like, hey man, you selling the site? What's going on? Like, is the site sold? Like, other people are like, congratulations on buying out the site. And it's like, no, guys, like this read the title. This was a year ago.
I did the same thing. It was the first, I mean, I roll over in bed and I grab my phone and I kind of scroll through and everything, and I happened to open Facebook this morning. I don't normally open Facebook that early, but I didn't have a lot of emails, so I just checked Facebook. And you know, breaking news, Cigar Federation's under new ownership, and I thought, dude, thanks for the heads up. like I mean, a heads up would have been nice. And then I looked at it. Oh, well, yeah, it was a year ago. Okay, I get it. And then you could tell by the comments, there's a lot of people who thought it was news. But no, it's, I mean, and then Logan did a little post kind of reminiscing on the year, and a lot has happened on the Federation over the last year. Anyway, we have gotten off topic. The growth of sharing our pairings, which he doesn't mention in his post because this show started more than a year ago, but that's another thing that's happened is the expansion of this show and the expansion of the listenership. So we really do appreciate you guys supporting us and supporting our vices.
Yes.
Speaking of which, let's jump in. Let's get into our first cocktail here.
I know you love cocktails. So
I've already been sipping on it.
Fair enough. Well, I'm just going to quickly peg for our viewers a little bit of details in the S-307 because we didn't get into the nitty-gritty.
Details.
I just want to say that it's got an Ecuadorian Sumatra wrapper, which is the S for the S-307, Ecuadorian Habano binder. So it's got a little bit of pepper and spice to it, which is nice, but the Sumatra adds some nice sweetness to it. And the Nicaraguan filler, which you can tell it's a bit of a heater. So let's talk about our first cocktails. What do you got on deck? As they say in the biz?
I'm starting with a rum-based cocktail. And yes, everything you said about the cigar is correct. It's got a nice spice. It's not overpowering in the pepper. I'm really sensitive to pepper, and that's something that I've come to realize over the years. As your palate forms and changes, pepper spice, especially on the retrohale, I'm really sensitive to that. So if it's overpowering, that equals a sad Robbie Raz. So this one is got a nice spice to it. It's not overly spicy. A lot of earthy notes in there. There is some sweetness that you're getting from the wrapper, and it's definitely a Nicaraguan blend. I'm not sure of the. There's definitely some Esteli in here. Yeah. I don't know of the exact proportions, but anyway, good cigar. I'm really enjoying it, and it's actually going to be a nice pairing, I think, with most of these cocktails, especially the first one because I've already been pairing it. I started with a Zacapa Estilo Viejo. Now this is a cocktail that is on the Zacapa Rum website. So if you go to zacaparum.com and you go through all the age verification and all that, their website is actually really cool looking. And if you go to the range and how to serve section, if you click all the way through on the Zacapa Solera 23, they give you the breakdown for this Estilo Viejo. It's just standard measure of Zacapa, so it's like 1 ounce. Angostura bitters, which are just your standard. That's Angostura. I don't know if it's Angostura or Angostura. I don't know how you say it, but that's how you spell it. And these are just your standard bitters. You can get this at Safeway. Standard aromatic bitters, that is. It also calls for Angostura orange bitters. Now, I don't have Angostura orange bitters. I have this Reagan's orange bitters, this guy with a sweet beard. So I just went with these. And by the way, I've had this bottle of orange bitters for probably 4 years, and that's how much I've used. Like, this is a lifetime supply. Now, and these are misleading. If you look at them, this one is 45% alcohol by volume, but you're using eye droplets of it. I mean, just a dropper. You're not using much at all. To put it into perspective, this, you can't see it. There's barely anything left in here. And this is the aromatic bitters. And we go through a bottle of that, I don't know, every 6 months. Not that we have a problem. And some simple syrup, which simple syrup is just a basic sweetener that you put in a myriad of cocktails. And it's simply simple syrup. It is 1 part it's 1 part sugar to 1 part water. So you put a cup of sugar and a cup of water in a little saucepan. You bring it to a boil. You let it simmer for 5 minutes, and then that's it. Then you have simple syrup. You stick it in a container. Some people say put it in the fridge. Some people say you don't have to. I always put it in the fridge just in case, but because really it's just sugar and water. You think you get mold, but anyway, that's all the cocktail calls for. It doesn't give specific measurements. It just says add bitters and simple syrup to taste. So I did 2 ounces. I beg your pardon. I did 1.5 ounces of Zacapa rum. I did 3 dashes of each of the bitters, which is a lot for that amount of alcohol. And I only did 1/2 ounce of simple syrup, and it was exceptionally sweet. This Zacapa rum is sweet to begin with, and simple syrup is pure sugar. So I don't think it needs a simple syrup at all. So I actually stirred in, like when you're making an old fashioned, you kind of stir until one of the ice cubes melts. Or at least that's the way they tell you to make it. Nobody has the patience to do that, though. I did that with this. I stirred in a complete ice cube to let it melt, and then I added in some more rum and 1 more dash of bitters to kind of offset that sweetness. So the cocktail in and of itself is basically just it's Zacapa rum, but it's a little bit spicy, and it's a little bit sweeter than it needs to be. But it's quite tasty, and if you've had Zacapa rum, you can just add a couple of dashes of bitters, of orange bitters and aromatic bitters, and it does add a nice little spice to it. Spice, relatively speaking, of course, not spice like you're going to get from a cigar. So the pairing here is actually really nice because the earthiness and the spiciness of the cigar, I want to keep it from going out, offsets the sweetness really nice. And rum with just about any cigar is really good. So
heck yeah.
This was kind of a layup, a tap in, if you will. I knew this was going to work out. For anybody who wants to make one of these, if you're going to follow the directions from zacaparum.com, I would leave out the simple syrup.
Well, I actually I'm doing almost the opposite run of you. So I've started with my bourbon-based cocktail. So I've got 2 bourbon-based cocktails and a rum-based cocktail. And you guys have a much more established, I don't want to say liquor cabinet, but you guys are used to making cocktails.
We got an established bar.
It's well stocked. So I look at my bar and I have some random assortment of liquors, none of which I could use for a cocktail, unfortunately. And then I looked for my ingredients and I have like some bitters, but they're not the right kind of bitters. So I actually spent probably more time finding 3 drinks for this show than I normally would in a normal show, which isn't to say that we just kind of fly by the seat of our pants. We fly by the seat of our pants. At any rate, what I did is I went to Knob Creek's website, and I love when they have cocktails on their websites because that makes my job a lot easier. So I'm doing a Knob Creek small batch reserve, which is a 9-year aged bourbon, probably a little highfalutin to be mixing into a cocktail, but I tell you what, it's pretty fantastic. So this is basically a spin off of a spin off of a spin. So this is supposed to be a dark and stormy originally, and dark and stormy, because I think it's one of your favorite cocktails. It's the national drink of Bermuda. It's pretty simple. It's rum and ginger beer with a little bit of lime juice and a lime in the glass. It's very simple, but it's a drink that dates back to like the 1800s when the Royal Navy was based out of Bermuda. The Royal Navy, of course, is they're given rum rations, and then they opened up a ginger beer plant in Jamaica. And of course, as things go, you got one there, you got the other there. Eventually, someone decided to combine the two, and it's brilliant. Now, I've had a dark and stormy with rum before, and it's good. This is, I got to tell you, I was kind of like, I don't know if this is going to be good, it's going to be gross. This is fantastic. This is like top 6 cocktails I think I've ever had. It could have been blended a lot better because I am not a aficionado when it comes to making cocktails. I'm sure that you could do a way better job of this, but I used the Fentimans ginger beer. Now I had Fentimans on for our Soda Pop 2.0 pairing show. Fentimans I appreciate because they brew their sodas. So they actually go through the time of botanically brewing it. It's not just a large batch commercial system. So they actually use fermented ginger root. They use cream of tartar, citric acid, herbal infusions with like juniper and all these other botanicals to make a really interesting ginger beer. And I saw that and I thought that would be perfect for this. And it is. It's fantastic. It adds this the ginger adds this really great depth, and you would think, because ginger is kind of spicy, so you would think that the spice of the ginger would really not go well with the spice of the cigar, but because it's like a different level of spice, it complements it really well. And the lime juice and the bourbon, it's so so good on a hot day.
So before you take another sip, tell me what your so you just went bourbon, lime juice, and ginger beer.
Yeah, so I went with I kind of took the recipe they had on their site, which was 1.5 ounces of Knob Creek, a half a lime squeezed. So I mean it's pretty vague, and then 4 to 5 ounces of ginger beer. I went with 5 ounces because I thought the ratio seemed about right. And again, I used Fentimans ginger beer, and honestly, I think the Fentimans ginger beer, like a good quality ginger beer, makes all the difference in the world for this beverage. And I'm like super excited to try it with rum as well, but. Like it's just got this sort of, I mean, I can't even explain. I'm gonna have to take a couple more sips because it's so complex, but it's so refreshing. And I can see why, you're in Bermuda, it's super hot, it's super muggy, super humid. This is incredibly refreshing.
Now, a classic dark and stormy is one of my favorites. If you're gonna make it dark and stormy, you got to go with Gosling's Black Seal rum. It's not the most expensive rum or even the best tasting rum, to be honest. But somehow when you mix it in a dark and stormy, it's the best. I think the bottle's like $19. And I always use that Jamaican, Reed's All Natural Jamaican ginger beer.
Nice.
Has a really good flavor to it. But what you're drinking is a variation off a cocktail that my wife and I have made and my aunt drinks all the time. And we've just made for years, just bourbon and ginger ale. and maybe you squeeze a lime into it, maybe you don't. But you're taking it up a next level. There's a big difference between ginger ale and ginger beer.
Yeah.
There's a massive flavor difference. I could see how that would be really tasty. How is it comparing with the cigar? How's it pairing with? I know you mentioned the spices are complementing each other.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, like again, I was worried that because they use botanical extracts. I mean, botanical extracts can be the flavors can be very, very full-bodied, but in a lot of ways that is perfect because you've got a fairly full-bodied. Like I wouldn't say this is a full cigar. I'd say this is a medium plus approaching a full. I think the C276 is more of a full-bodied cigar. So this is great if you're looking for a cigar. If you enjoy cigars in the medium plus. As Rob was saying, it's got some spices to it without being a pepper blast to your face, which is nice. And it's got some elegance, some multi-layers to it. But it just pairs brilliantly with this bourbon dark and stormy. There's the sweetness off the dark and stormy, but I think why this works is because I think rum would be too sweet with this cigar, and I think what the nice thing about the bourbon is, bourbon's got a little bit of spice and pepper to it already, and then, versus a ginger ale, that ginger beer just has more complexity, which I think I've said 3 times now, because honestly, I'm digging this. I could sit out on my patio and drink these on a Saturday afternoon and just be a happy camper. That's
the whole point.
Yeah.
No, and I think the way that you're describing the cigar is right on. I think some people will smoke it and say it's definitely full bodied. I think it's full bodied. There's a ton of flavor here. It's not really a full strength cigar. It's a medium plus. But this is the kind of cigar that could blow some people away if you're not really used to Nicaraguan tobacco.
Yeah.
It's not as strong as the C276. The C276 is my favorite cigar that Fred has made. I think that cigar is fantastic.
I swear that I put that C276 as like top 6 for last year. I'm sure that it was either number 5 or number 6 for me for all year.
It was in my I think it was in my top 10 as well. I pulled up our group review. It's a little bit windy here, so I apologize. I had to be outside again because I'm having internet connection issues, so I apologize for the background noise. But I know we did a group review. I gave it a 91, which is a box split score. That was just far and away the best cigar that Fred has produced. This is really good too. It's different, but it's really good. So I mean, my pairing, like I said, it was a layup. It was a little too easy. I knew that rum was going to pair well with this, with the sweetness. I would recommend not using simple syrup if you do make that cocktail with Zacapa. And I mean, I'm ready to move on to my next one whenever you are.
I don't know if I want to move on. I just want to sit here and sip this. But before I move on, I just want to remind our audience you're listening to Sharing Our Pairings, episode 33, Pairing Cocktails 2.0. Today we're pairing with the Nomad S-307. If you enjoy our show today, we appreciate you go to our YouTube page and like the video, subscribe to our content. We really appreciate the subscriptions. Helps us deliver a lot of content. Of course, we appreciate our podcast listeners. Thanks. We know you guys are out there all the way from Germany to Australia and Venezuela and Spain, France. We see you guys popping up there, and you guys are all around the world, and we appreciate you tuning in. I don't know why you're tuning in, but we appreciate you guys tuning in. We're talking about cocktails today, and I'm currently pairing a variation on the dark and stormy, and I don't want to move away from it because it's so good. But
well, I'm in the process of actually putting together my second cocktail, and my second cocktail actually has champagne in it. So I will be popping a bottle right now.
So maybe while you do that, because I cheated. I do not trust myself with anything around the laptop. So on my second, again, I'm going with a bourbon. Again, going with the Knob Creek because I love Knob Creek. I love Bullet. I love bourbon. But I have Knob Creek in the house, and it's great. This is a bit of an odd one for me. This is a Knob Creek. Now, again, I said I was kind of doing variations of variations. And I've got my third drink here from my lovely girlfriend, kind enough to mix it for me.
Vanna just showed up in the background.
Yeah. At any rate, so this is originally called for a Knob Creek rye, which sounds pretty good, but I was already committed to bourbon. So the original recipe is 1.5 Knob Creek rye whiskey with a half orange slice, a sprig of rosemary, a half sprig of rosemary. Now that's kind of out there for me.
Fancy.
Sugar and club soda. So really not that complex, but I decided to go with bourbon. So as you can see, it's pretty orangey, and you know, it's kind of got that great combination. Like bourbon, I think goes well with orange because, you know, bourbon's got that spice, orange has got that sweetness. It's a good pair. And while I turn it back over to you, I'm going to take some sips.
Okay. So my next cocktail here is one of my recent finds and one of my favorites now, actually. It's called an Old Cuban. It was created by Audrey Saunders at the Peugeot Club in New York. And I feel like John, because I actually have I have some background on this cocktail.
Nice.
For reasons that I'll share with everybody once it's ready to go. But it's basically, it consists of, it's aged rum. So with this I use Zacapa again, which normally Zacapa is, like you were saying, it's a little bit highfalutin to be mixing. Normally I'm drinking Zacapa just straight up, but I had the bottle with me and it was open and it was almost gone, so I figured what the hell, we'll just finish it off. Aged rum, lime juice, mint, simple syrup, aromatic bitters, and champagne. So it's kind of like we're taking the best things from a mojito and the best things from a rum daiquiri, not a daiquiri that's slushy like you get out of a little machine and you pull a thing and it's, you know, it looks like you're getting an alcoholic Slurpee. Not that kind of daiquiri, like classic rum daiquiri. Take those things and combine them together, and that's how you get the Old Cuban. So it's 1.5 ounces of aged rum. I used Zacapa this time. 1/2 ounce of lime juice, 1/2 ounce of simple syrup. We talked about simple syrup already. 2 dashes of the Angostura aromatic bitters, and 2 ounces of champagne, and you need 12 mint leaves. So with this, you're going to muddle the mint. You throw everything into a shaker like this. You get 12 mint leaves, give or take. Throw that into your shaker. You're going to muddle that. Get a muddler. It's one of those things that kind of looks like you're stamping something on the ground. It's got teeth on the bottom. And you muddle up the mint, but you don't shred it. You just kind of bruise it a little bit. You add everything in, you shake it up. You don't add in the champagne and shake it up because you'll have a problem if you do that. Add everything in, shake it up, pour it over ice, and then add the champagne on top. Fantastic cocktail. Now, is this going to be a good pairing for this cigar? I'm not sure. I actually just finished the cocktail. It ends up looking kind of like this. It's a little bit cloudy. You're going to have some bits of mint floating in there. Another thing I like to do when I'm making a cocktail like this is take a few mint leaves that I'm not using in the cocktail itself and kind of rim the glass with it, just give it a little bit of extra flavor. But it's a fantastic cocktail. It's really, really refreshing. I really enjoy it. It's kind of akin to what you were drinking a second ago, John, but you know, with different ingredients, but the same kind of thing. You could sip it. You could sit on your porch and sip these for hours, and then hopefully you don't have to drive anywhere. So I'm going to take a few sips and just try to get an idea on this pairing because I'm not sure how this is going to go.
So I got to actually slow down on this S-307 because the interesting thing about the Ecuadorian Sumatra wrapper is I think it belies the, as you say, and you know, I confuse some terms there between strength and body. This is definitely a full-bodied cigar, and because I think the Ecuadorian Sumatra wrapper has some sweetness to it, it belies the amount of power that's in the cigar. You really don't want to power bomb this cigar; it's going to drop you on the ground. And I've finished like 2 inches of it in 30 minutes, and I really got to slow down. But it's so tasty and sweet, and like I said, it was going really well with my first pairing. The second pairing is interesting because to me it's so again, this is a variation of the Knob Creek Rye Orange Tumbler. It's a bourbon tumbler. It's more akin, I would say, to an old fashioned. So with an old fashioned, you get a lot more of the bourbon flavor. You know, there's some complex spice, a little bit of pepper to it. The bourbon has more of an influence than the other ingredients that are in it. You would think that the rosemary would be quite strong because rosemary is usually quite pungent. It adds a lot of flavor to anything, and that's why you don't add a lot to whatever you're cooking with. To add it in a cocktail is kind of interesting to me. The orange does not have as much of an impart on the flavor as I was expecting. I was kind of expecting a pretty heavy orange tinge to it. But again, I would kind of call this an old-fashioned twist because it does remind me of old-fashioned. It works really well. I'm going to take some more sips of it while Rob talks about his pairing, but so far I would say my first pairing is much more enjoyable, or at least works much better with the cigar than my second pairing.
This is actually a lot better than I thought it was going to be. The when you're sipping on an old Cuban, you're going to get that sweetness from the rum. That's why, I mean, if you're making any rum cocktails, anything that's not overly fruity, or that you're not like a rum runner or something like that, but a mojito or a daiquiri, like I was saying, instead of using that just basic Bacardi clear rum or any clear rum,
Yeah.
mix in some, try the same cocktail, but mix it in with an aged rum. And Zaya is perfect. Zaya aged 12-year aged rum. It's like $20, $25. It's not expensive. It's really sweet. So if you're making drinks and they call for simple syrup, maybe you can back off of that. You don't necessarily need it because you're getting a lot more sweetness out of that rum than you would out of something clear. But it really does change the whole complexity, and the whole flavor profile of the cocktail that you're having. But I digress. So with the old Cuban here, as I take a quick sip, just to remind myself, you're getting sweetness from the rum, you're getting some effervescence from the champagne and a dryness from that champagne. It really is a dry cocktail. It doesn't linger on the palate that long. The lime and the mint really stands out while I'm smoking the cigar. The lime really kind of cuts through everything. So in a way, it's almost like I'm cleansing my palate in between every puff. So I'm not getting the full experience of the cocktail, but I'm getting almost an enhanced experience of the cigar. That earthiness is really earthy. The spice gets cut through by the effervescence that you're getting from the champagne, and the flavor of the mint just kind of seems to cut through everything. It's an interesting experience. I don't know if I know I like it. I don't know if it's a great pairing or not, but I'm enjoying it. I don't know if that makes any sense. After having taken a sip of the cocktail before I even, took a puff of the cigar and combined the flavors, I didn't think it was going to be very good. Almost reminds me of when we were pairing IPAs with a particular cigar. It's you wouldn't think that they're going to work as well as they do.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because it's got that brighter flavor. But this makes me feel like I'm at the beach.
Nice. Well, it's interesting you say about using a higher quality rum, and I agree with you. I think, what I've seen, or at least the impression I get with a lot of cocktails, is the cocktail is really to hide the imperfections or lack of depth and complexity on the alcohol. So like mojitos are, since I went to Cuba and been going to Cuba, mojitos are like one of my go-to cocktails. I can down 10 mojitos in a day responsibly, but they use like a 4-year.
Nice try.
Thank you. They use like a 4-year clear rum that's not been barrel aged. I mean, it's a really inexpensive rum because they know they can get away with it. They know that the rest of the cocktail supports the rum, and I agree with you that I think that if you go with a more aged rum, a rum that has more character to it, you're just getting a better drink experience. I mean, yeah, it's going to cost a little bit more, but ideally, if you're sitting on a patio and you're doing some pairing, the goal is not to down 5 drinks. The goal is to have one tumbler with your cigar and sip it and enjoy it. And I think, I agree with you wholeheartedly that use a better alcohol, use a more complex alcohol, more rum, and a better rum, and it's going to be better. It's just going to be a better cocktail.
Yeah, and that goes with just about everything. I mean, gin, bourbon. I mean, when you start talking about gin, the difference in flavors in the different styles of gin, from a London Dry to like a Hendrick's. I don't think Hendrick's is a London Dry, but Hendrick's has a much more floral palette to it. The changes and the differences that you get in those flavors is pretty amazing. And if you let's say you're making a mojito and you're using, we could even use Flor de Cana as an example, because Flor de Cana is the 4-year-old clear, right? Mm-hmm. If you make one mojito with the 4-year-old clear, and then make one with the 7, and the 7 is a dark rum, and then make one with the 12, and taste all of them, and you can really taste that difference in each one. Maybe you'll like one better than the others. I prefer, when talking about Flor de Cana, I prefer the 12 to the 18. It's cheaper, but I prefer the flavor profile. I don't prefer it because it's cheaper. I just happen to prefer that flavor. So you may taste them all and say, Rob, you're full of crap because I like the clear one best. And the flavor is subjective. Taste is subjective. So, but it's fun. I mean, that's the kind of things that if we've got a Saturday, my wife and I have nothing to do, that's the kind of stuff that we'll do. Is we'll make some different things and play around with it. But to get back to this particular pairing, I'm surprised that it's as good as it is. It's highlighting the cigar big time. I think it's doing a disservice to the cocktail, and the only reason I say that is because I used Zacapa, and Zacapa is really good. And I know that if I was drinking this on its own, I would be enjoying the cocktail more. But depending on what your goals are, I'm having this cigar, and I want to make a cocktail to drink with the cigar. I'd be really happy to do this again. And I know that this is, I mean, it's really going to bring out the flavors in the cigar. And I would say that would do the same thing for any earthy, spicy cigar. Now, if you go with a sweeter cigar, you might get a different experience. It might not be as good. But for me, with this is really good. I'm impressed.
I think it'd be interesting for me to revisit this rye orange tumbler with a rye, because I can see why they would go with a rye, because I think rye tends to be a little bit, and of course I'm in Alberta, so we are rye country here, and rye tends to be a bit sweeter, a little bit bolder. So it works. It's not, we're talking about shades of goodness here, going from good to great. And the bourbon orange tumbler is good. I mean, it's tasty, it's refreshing, it's balanced, it works with the cigar. And I think I'm kind of in the same boat as you, where I think the cocktail on its own would probably be a lot more complex if I wasn't smoking with the cigar, because really the cocktail is being not run over by the cigar, but the cocktail serves to support the cigar. Whereas with my first pairing, I felt like both of them were playing off each other really, really well. Either way, this is a good time. I mean, this I think, and I don't know if this is true of all nomads, but because of the profile of a lot of the nomads, I think they inherently pair really well with cocktails. They pair really well with bourbon, and naturally pair really well with bourbon cocktails, because you do have that earthiness, you do have the spiciness, you do have a hint of leather. So those are the elements that tend to go really well with bourbon, rum, and bourbon-based cocktails.
Yeah, I'm curious. My next drink is more akin to what you're drinking now, with some different components. But I'm curious to see. And again, I'll preface, I guess, with the way that we're making these cocktails. It's not necessarily. This is not how I would normally make a drink. I portioned out all the alcohol and everything an hour ago and put it in the shaker, sans ice, of course. So it's not getting watered down, but the components of the drink are sitting together longer. I don't know if that's a positive or a negative. But it is just a little asterisk there, just to keep that in mind. But no, I'm curious with my next drink here. But I would say this is a winner for the cigar. It's kind of blowing out this cocktail. But like I said, if I'm sitting on the beach in Mexico or in the Dominican, which I hope to be doing someday, and puffing on a cigar, and I'm sipping on a drink like this, or it's an old Cuban, so maybe I'm sitting in Cuba, who knows? But it's definitely a good drink if you like rum, if you like a mojito. It's got some of those characteristics. If you like a classic daiquiri, it's got some of those characteristics too. Take the best things from those two, pair it in, and you get the old Cuban cocktail. Very, very tasty. I really do recommend that. And this pairing, I recommend it. So it gets the double R seal of approval.
Nice. Well, and I think you're right. I think, from my understanding, my limited understanding of cocktails, really the purpose, the goal is to provide those flavors fresh. You muddle, but then you immediately pour, and the goal is to bring it to your glass immediately, because I think if it sits over time, those flavors blend too much. And I think the purpose of a cocktail, when you talk about different cocktail or different liquors or whatever that's being added, whether there's bitters or liquors or champagne, each of those is bringing a particular flavor profile. And if you leave it too long, they blend in too much, and the uniqueness of each of those flavors is getting lost.
Yeah.
Before we move on to our last pairing, just a reminder to our audience that you're listening to and watching, hopefully Sharing Our Pairings, episode 33, Pairing Cocktails 2.0. Today we're pairing with the Nomad S-307. We are broadcast live. We are also on podcasts. You can listen to us on iTunes or any podcast, whether it's on your Windows computer, Windows Phone, Android, or Apple iOS. Thanks very much, everyone, for listening and tuning in. And thanks very much, everyone across the world who's listening, because we know you guys are out there, like I said, everywhere from Venezuela to Germany and everywhere in between. We're talking about cocktails, and as Rob works on his third cocktail, I had a fantastic girlfriend here finish preparing the third cocktail, which is a little bit more complicated. And I kind of did go with cocktails that were a little bit simpler today because I don't have a lot of ingredients, and I didn't want to go out and spend $100 on ingredients because this show is funded for the most part out of our pockets. But this is called a Dirty Coke Float. You can see it's more cocktail-ish, like it's a little bit more fancy. This is a half of a lime juiced in the bottom. Then you add 1.5 shots of light rum. Now, Rob just mentioned and was talking about using a more complicated rum, a more complex rum, and I did go with the Florida Canyon 12 because the Florida Canyon 12 is barrel aged. It's got a lot more character to it, so I'm kind of interested to see how this works in this cocktail. It actually wiped out the last of my Florida Canyon 12, so Florida Canyon 12 is going to be on my buying list shortly. Once you add the rum, you add cola. Now, I added full Coke, like a full sugar Coke. I'm sure you could use a Coke Zero if you want to, but I tend to be, my taste palette is a little bit sensitive to artificial sweeteners, so I kind of wanted to go with a full Coke. And then lastly, what was interesting to me is you add coconut ice cream. Now, I wanted to switch things up because I like to keep it fresh, and I went with a coconut sorbetto, which, you know, is more of the coconut cream, more of the coconut flavor, and I felt like that is going to be a little bit more full-bodied and a little bit more complex. So now that I've laid that out, I'm going to pass it back to Rob and let him talk about what he's tasting next.
I'm really intrigued by this cocktail that you're making. And I think that your last pairing is going to be much better than mine because I've already tried it and it's a miss, which is unfortunate because this is a really good cocktail. This is a cocktail. It's called the Paper Plane, like a paper airplane. And I just had it recently. My wife and I went to, we kind of did an impromptu dinner on like a Tuesday night during the week, and we met at this place in Lafayette. It's a relatively new restaurant. It was a Tuesday, actually, because they did a Taco Tuesday type thing. We had churros there. Oh, God, forget about it. They were so damn good. But I digress. This was a cocktail that I ordered, and it's a bourbon-based cocktail, and I'd never heard of it before. It's all equal parts of everything that I'm going to list. It's bourbon, lemon juice. Well, I used it's Averna Amaro Siciliano, and I'll explain what these are, and Aperol, and it's got a lemon twist. Now, this is a fancy pants, hoity-toity, pinky up cocktail. Now, you serve it in a coupe glass, which this is what I'm trying to give you the right angle here. You can see that's a coupe glass, crystal with a little silver around the rim because we're fancy like that. I really like these glasses, actually. Now, if you go back to some, their coupe glasses are champagne glasses, and they are classic champagne glasses, and the word on the street is that coupe glasses were formed around the shape of Marie Antoinette's breast.
Interesting.
So if that's what I've heard. Now, if anybody's listening and they can correct me, please do so. But that's Marie Antoinette's known for a lot of things, and she was actually. Well, I'm not going to get into any political views or anything like that. But she was kind of an interesting person. Did a little bit of research when when wife and I went to Paris, and she was an interesting woman. I don't know. Depending on who you listen to, she was either understood or completely misunderstood. Anyway, I think she may have been a little bit more understood nowadays than she was back then. But again, I don't side with or without her political views. Let's just keep it that way. So let's talk about the ingredients of these cocktails. Bourbon, I used Bullet. It's a spicier bourbon. Lemon juice is very simple and self-explanatory. Now, when we get into this Averna, and I'll give you guys kind of a look at it here. I didn't know what this was, and this is a brand new bottle. We just picked it up.
Yeah, I've never seen that before.
It's a liqueur, and let me give you some background on it. It's an Italian liqueur. It's produced in Sicily. It's named after its inventor, Salvador Averna. He invented the recipe in 1868, and the drink is it's produced in the island of Sicily and is considered a traditional drink. It's a digestif, so it's an after dinner drink, and it's I'm just going to read the overview here. It says, the herbs, roots, and citrus rinds are allowed to soak in the base liquor before caramel is added. Averna is sweet, thick, and with a gentle herbal bitterness. It's 29% alcohol by volume, and it's distilled and bottled, as we said, in Sicily. It's very herbal. It's got some bitterness to it. It's got a little bit of fruity sweetness to it, but not a lot. It's not the kind of thing that I would personally drink on the rocks. Some people do. And as I said, it's a digestif, so it's an after-dinner thing. This also includes Aperol, which I didn't know about Aperol until recently either. If you look at it, it looks like old-school orange triaminic you used to take when you were a kid, you know, when you have a cold, your mom gives you that orange triaminic.
Or even like a rosé wine.
Yeah, and it's definitely more bitter. It's an aperitif. Bright orange in color, has a unique taste. I'm reading this from their website, actually. Thanks to the secret recipe, which has never been changed, with infusions of select ingredients, including bitter and sweet oranges, many other herbs, including rhubarb, and roots in perfect proportions. So they don't get into too much of what's in it. But if you've ever had, it's definitely bitter. If you've ever had a cocktail that has, oh crap, now I can't think of what it is. The one that's red and it's really, really bitter.
I wish I could help. Oh, there we go.
No, Campari. So like if you've had a Negroni before, that actually would have been a nice try too, a bourbon Negroni, which is called, it's called something else. I can't think of it. Anyway, very, very bitter, bright red in appearance, and it looks like Kool-Aid, so you think it's going to be really sweet. It's not. It's really, really bitter. So this is kind of like a sweeter, orangey version of Campari. Now, when you mix all this stuff together, you get a really nice cocktail that's got a really nice blend of herbal, spice from the bourbon, and that bitterness on the finish, which is really, really clean. Now, as far as pairing it with the cigar, it doesn't really work, which is unfortunate. But you get that orange sweetness, and there's a little lemon rind in there. You get that lemon, that citrusy sweetness from up front. And when you combine that citrus with that bitterness from the Aperol, its finish is really distinct and really clean. So it really almost cleans your palate in between each puff. But it's like if I were doing this and I was going to drink this whole drink and I was going to have an entire cigar, I would have a sip of the cocktail. I would take 3 or 4 puffs of the cigar, maybe a couple sips of water, and then go back and have another sip of the cocktail. So I would try to enjoy them separately at the same time, if that makes any sense. And the flavors of the cocktail are strong enough and distinct enough that I think you can actually do that. So you can enjoy them at the same time, but you're not really pairing it, at least in my mind.
That's unfortunate. But
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But I mean, after I just had a sip and I take a couple puffs of the cigar. You know, when you're changing. It's one thing I've learned when we're doing this show, when you're changing profiles from different drinks, because we stick with the same cigar, because if you didn't, you'd just be blown out. But it's the same thing. If you go from one cigar to the next, it takes some time for your palate to adjust to the new flavors that you're getting. And the flavors on that cocktail are so strong. And I should have known this coming in that this wasn't going to work. But I just felt like making it because I wanted to have one. But it works in the sense that I can have a sip of the drink, maybe take a sip of water, have a couple puffs of the cigar, and I'm enjoying them independently of each other. It's almost like listening to music and reading a book. Yeah. If that makes sense. Like if you pause in between chapters and you listen to, whatever it is you're listening to, something instrumental, I would assume. I can't read and listen to lyrics in the back of my head, but if I'm listening to something instrumental, so Miles Davis or something, and then I pick up the book and I start reading, I'm more focused on what I'm reading. So I'm focused on what it is that I'm tasting. I'm sipping the cocktail, and I'm really drawing this out, so I apologize. But this is a different experience for me, but it actually kind of works. In a vacuum, it probably works because I want it to.
All right. Well, I mean, it sounds, and I think I understand what you mean. Like, there's sometimes where, we pair things, and each of the things we're pairing are good on their own, but when you combine them together, it's just they don't made up. You think of it in puzzle pieces, great on their own. doesn't quite line up properly, not because either one is bad. It's just, you know, they aren't really the right fit.
You know, it's funny. We actually just got a question from Fred.
Nice.
Fred Rui of Nomad Cigars. Yeah, Fred, this thing's definitely on. You want to join us? I can email you the link. You can hop in. Fred's big on the pop-in. He does like the pop-in. I don't know if he's sitting in front of his computer or not. But Fred, if you are, we'll post another question. I'll send you the link and you can pop in. Kudos on the S-307, by the way. I mean, we're tearing through these.
Just power. Like, look at that. This is not how, just for our audience, you are not supposed to smoke a Toro this fast. You're not supposed to smoke half a Toro in 45 minutes. Not okay.
You're smoking a Toro?
I'm smoking a Toro. Look at how far I've got this puppy down.
I'm doing a Robusto, and I'm kind of at the same spot as you.
Yeah. Like, honestly, this is I'm sure that I have not smoked the S-307. After smoking this now, I have not smoked the S-307. This is a great cigar. No surprise, because, you know, I am becoming a bit of a Nomad whore, mostly because you know, people have a palate. Like you know, as a reviewer and as obviously a guy who does sharing our pairings, we like to challenge our palates all the time and try new things and find new things, and that's fun. But you do have a wheelhouse, and the nice thing about the blends coming out of Nomad is they fit in my wheelhouse. That is, you know, they've got spices, they've got pepper, they've got strength, they've got body, and they've got character that I just repeatedly enjoy. And even with the latest release, the Connecticut Fuerte, which is not your father's Connecticut, it's a Connecticut with a powerhouse of pepper and spice to it, right in my wheelhouse. You know, you get that blend of Connecticut and spices. And again, we're not being sponsored by Nomad, even though I'm wearing the shirt. This is all out of our pocket. But getting back on topic here, talking about my cocktail. So this is interesting. This is a very huge departure from the cocktails we've had up until now. I would describe this as a dessert cocktail. So this is the kind of thing you would drink coincidentally at 7, 8 o'clock at night. You've had dinner. You want to go out on the patio, have a smoke, and enjoy a cocktail with. This is probably a really good pairing. Would I have it at on an afternoon or just out with some friends? Probably not. But this is an interesting combination. The mix of the coconut, and coconut's got this creaminess to it and sort of this elegant mouthfeel to it, which is really nice. Then you get a little bit of the Coke zing. You know, if you enjoy Coke versus Pepsi, Coke's got this zip to it, which I really enjoy. And then at the end of the flavor, the Flor de Cana comes through with just this rum complexity. And, you know, I would say that this cocktail is absolutely 100% supporting the cigar. The cocktail is almost getting completely lost with the cigar, but I'm okay with that because it works. You know, this is a dessert pairing. There is some lime juice in here, and I think the lime juice. Oh, look who just joined!
Fred's big on the pop-in. I don't think we can hear you though.
Can't hear me?
Oh, there you are.
Well, because I wasn't talking.
What's happening, Fred? Oh, now I can't hear you again.
Well, I didn't want to talk over John. Am I not talking?
Oh, you have to plug in your headphones there. We can hear you in the back. We can hear John in the background.
I hear John. I've got my headphones are in. Oh, wait, now I'm getting a weird delay. Hold on a sec. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Hold on. I got like 2 windows going. I hear myself. I hear John. I don't know what I'm doing. I've got some sort of like caramel corn thing that I was supposed to try because I'm in Kansas City. So, yeah, not impressed, but okay. We'll see how that pairs. Caramel corn.
So how's everything going, man? You getting fired up for IPCPR?
I am. I had like this big push beforehand. Kendall at Outlaw Cigar Company in Kansas City, he plans his events for the year in advance and called me last November, and I don't know, maybe I'd been drinking or whatever. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll do the event. What's the date? You know, and he's like, well, it's a huge event, and, you know, because he does just like, I mean, they bring in like, you know, I mean, I guess the National Guard's bringing in like a howitzer, and they bring in like a Corvette Club and Tilted Skirt Girls, and, you know, I don't know, there's like 300-400 people, and I don't know. I got sucked into it, and then I'm like, wait, then I get it all put in my calendar. I'm like, hey, wait a minute, that's Saturday before IPCPR. But you know what? It's all good because I mean, we're having a good time. I kind of had the day off. I did an event in Houston yesterday. Flew up today, so I could kind of try some of the local barbecue. So I threw out to Twitter, got a bunch of suggestions, and I ate like 700 pounds of meat. So I think I'm pretty well covered at this point on the barbecue. It was good. It was good. Actually, it was actually good barbecue. So apologies to my Texas followers.
Hey Fred, I have a bit of a left field question for you. Do you watch Archer FX at all?
You're talking about Archer, the cartoon?
The cartoon, yeah.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Why? Did that just label me somehow? Because I think it's a pretty hysterical show.
No, it's a hysterical show, and I was gonna mention in the show before you even popped in that when I think of you, the Cheryl Outlaw Country totally applies to you. Outlaw Country Fred.
It could have been worse. It could have been like the mad scientist dude or something like that, Krieger or something. But I guess the Outlaw Country will work. Woohoo! Outlaw Country.
Outlaw Country.
Those of you that haven't seen the show have no idea what we're talking about.
I haven't seen it. I've heard good things. I know Jared loves it.
It's crazy stupid, but it is pretty funny. It's
hysterical.
So what's up with you guys? You guys getting ready for the show? And I mean, I saw the pairings. I saw the picture which had like limes and let's see. Now hold on. There was rosemary, lime, Knob Creek, Fenelman's beer, Coke, Florida Cana, and creamy coconut or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's John's. That's all John's stuff.
Yeah, and that sounded impressive. I was actually looking at the damn photo right when I said that, but made it look like I was making it up. So there you go.
No, things are good here. We're just we're pairing an S-307 with a few different cocktails here. We've kind of gone down. We've actually just kind of finished our last cocktail. John was giving the rundown on his last one.
What was the last one? Because that's right when I logged in. Because I was thinking it was starting a little later. So what was the last one? I think you were saying it didn't work with.
No, I think that was me that didn't work. It was my cocktail didn't necessarily work. John was enjoying his.
What was the one that didn't work?
It's a cocktail called a Paper Plane.
Oh, I don't know what that is. Okay.
I get a little bit weird when it comes to cocktails. It's all equal parts of bourbon, lemon juice, this Averna Amaro Siciliano, which is kind of it's a digestif, and it's a little bit sweet, and it's a little bit earthy, and Aperol, which is aperitif, which is an aperitif, which is quite bitter. And the cocktail in and of itself is very good.
I just popped in on the wrong show. I have no idea what he just did. He just named off like 5 things that I'm like.
Yeah, like I said, I get my wife and I. We don't mess around. If someone comes over and they want a drink, no matter how obscure it is, chances are we can make it.
Really?
We've got a pretty extensive bar at home. My wife makes all of our own simple syrups, and she makes flavored stuff, and she makes grenadine, for goodness sake. So yeah, we get a little bit weird, but all in all, the best one that I had was the old Cuban, which is really just rum, mint, lime, and some champagne.
So you're like totally into it, because when you come to Orlando, there's a bar down there that we go to occasionally that they just do really wild, crazy stuff. I mean, last time I'm there, they're like burning this piece of Thai leaf or whatever to smoke the glass, and then like that goes away, and then he does all this other stuff. I'm like, I'm thirsty, and it's just like this huge production. But it's super cool. Actually, the entrance to the place is really neat, because if you don't know where it is, it's just an elevator door. And so it's kind of like that speakeasy. There's no signage out there, nothing. So if you walk over to that elevator door, the door opens up, and the bar is like literally 4 feet away from you right there, and all these people turn and look at you like, who are you? Why'd you find this place? So it's pretty, but all their drinks are really wild like that. And I can say that despite the may or may not be copious amount of drinking occasionally when you're blending, I can't say that was a drink that came up in the mix.
That sounds like my kind of place, though. That sounds like my wife and I have a similar story. When we were in Chicago, we found this place called, and I'll just make this quick, called the Velvet Hour. and we had the cab driver drive all over the place looking for this, and he dropped us off, and I was like, dude, you didn't take us to the right place. This is a strip mall. There's a freaking Kinko's. This is not the right place. And we got out, because I was getting upset with the cab driver, and we're like, let's just get out of the car. So we get out, because there was this other place over here. We can go there if we need to. And we look across the street, and it's like the front of the building is scaffolding, and like when they put up the plywood when they're making something new, but there was a door in there, and there was people lined up at the door, and so we go to the line. So you guys waiting for the velvet hour? So we think so. And the guy came out, and he actually pulled me and my wife in, because we were just two, and he only had a small table. But from the exterior, you don't think anything of it. And you get inside, and it's like 30-foot ceilings with velvet draping everywhere, and like the seats were like 12 feet high on the backs. It was just amazing. That was the only place I've ever had a cocktail that had you can get different kinds of bitters. That one had tobacco bitters in it, and it was a fantastic drink. I don't even know how you make that, but someday I'm going to figure it out. But yeah, it was a great cocktail. But this place that you're talking about sounds like my kind of joint. But anyway, we'll get back. John, your last drink was what?
Yeah, I'll just finish up my drink, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about IPCPR. So this was the Dirty Coke float. This was half juiced lime with 1.5 shots of rum. In this case, I used Florida Canyon 12 with a little bit of Coke on top, and then 2 scoops. It calls for coconut ice cream, but I used 2-3 scoops of coconut sorbetto. And, you know, again, yeah. So, I mean, as a standalone, this is not really a cocktail you drink normally. This is really a dessert cocktail, and it's a dessert cocktail. I mean, I don't know any other way to describe it. It's sweet, but it's complex with the rum and the lime juice in it. Surprisingly, supports the S-307 pretty well. But I'd say that for pairing tonight, the take on the dark and stormy, which is pretty simple, which is just bourbon, ginger beer, and then some lime juice. This was like phenomenal. Like this is something I'd be revisiting on the weekend, probably a couple times, to be honest. Because this is like a match made in heaven. This is a perfect pairing.
Oh, cool. Very cool. Yeah, I'm always interested to hear about the pairings, because it's not something that I really think, you know, in the blending process, and I don't know that I would change the process for it. You know, I know the whole craft beer thing's been good to me, so I've been getting a lot of feedback from a lot of craft beer guys going, hey, it goes good with this or that. And the craft beer thing just amazes me. I mean, I walk into a store that's got a huge selection, and I can sit there for days just reading the names, because they've just got the coolest names. And so I'm always interested in the pairing stuff of it, because I'm more of a single malt guy. I'm learning the bourbons and the whiskeys a little bit more, mostly just out of peer pressure. I didn't think I liked bourbon and whiskey, and I think I've said before, it's what I found out is I don't like cheap bourbon and whiskey. Yeah. So I've actually started to appreciate them a little bit, interestingly enough, and you know, it's been a neat process.
Well, and I think because of course, you know, we hung out in Orlando and did some drinking, responsible drinking. But I'm a huge totally responsible. But I'm a huge single malt guy myself, of course, and I think definitely after the IPCPR, because I'm going to come down to the IPCPR with a veritable tank of whiskey samples for Rob. I think what would be really interesting for me, and Rob can probably attest to this, I think it would be really interesting to try the Chichibu Japanese whiskey with a Nomad, and possibly a couple of other different, like a Lafroig and maybe an Oban with a Nomad would be really interesting pairing for me, because I think the smokiness of that would offset the sweetness coming off the wrapper.
Yeah, I can tell you that the Oban goes great with it. I can tell you that the Glenmorangie La Quinta Ruben goes really good with it. And that's just extensive research. That's the things you got to do. I mean,
you got to put in the time.
You do. You have to put in the time. That's well said.
And, my liver and my gut can tell you that I've put in the time. So it's definitely something you got to do. They're fine. Sorry, my dogs got out and they're running around. I had to get up and plug in my computer because I was running out of juice. It's just all kinds of rookie mistakes.
First world problems.
Yeah, right.
So what are you guys looking forward to the show? There's some neat stuff. I'm excited. You know, I mean, you guys know. I mean, I smoked cigars long before I ever made them, so I'm excited. You know, I mean, my big thing is like, man, when can I break away from the booth and go like, you know, hit up some of these guys? And I'm excited to see what they've got coming out.
You're the only person who says stuff like that. No, it's true, but like, we have a lot of guests on Cigar Chats, another show that we do here on CigarFederation.com, and some guys will give you the canned answer of, well, I smoke my own stuff, and blah, I'm always blending, and blah blah blah, and that's I get it, but it's refreshing to hear you say that. I want to see what everybody else is doing, because I mean, really, that's another thing, you got to put in your work, you got to see what the competition's doing.
Well, I think it's just a general appreciation of cigars.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was on this show a year ago when someone asked me what I was smoking. I named off brands, and I'm like, everybody says, you guys said it's like, everybody says their own stuff's the best, and I either think they're naive or lying or just short-sighted and not feeling confident enough to say that there's other great stuff out there. But as someone who, look, I can't make 100 blends, I can't make 50 blends, and yet there's a lot of good stuff out there. So as someone who really appreciates cigars and appreciates tobaccos, I really enjoy trying other people's stuff, and some of the stuff's obviously not my profile, and I never mention publicly the stuff that I don't like, but I definitely say the stuff that I do like, and I'm just excited to see what some new stuff. There's probably about 3 or 4 coming out there that I'm really curious to see what they got coming.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just, and now as we're getting that deluge of information of who's doing what, I'm very curious to see what Steve Saka's doing.
Yeah, he's probably first on my list as far as or at least top 5 for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really curious to see what he has, given the factory he chose and what his process has been. And I mean, we all knew he was working on something because we knew he was spending an inordinate amount of time in Nicaragua, like every other week forever.
Yep.
And I remember, I knew when he left to the States, so I'm like watching my calendar right at the 2-year mark, thinking, okay, and really rooting for him and really hoping that something, that he had something that he was going to be doing, and it wasn't, I didn't know I assumed there was a non-compete, and I didn't know how long it would be. And I hoped it was 2 years, because I'm like, man, I hope this is his year. And as he was vamping up, I'm like, nice, we'll get to see something from him.
Yeah, when we went down on the Cigar Federation Cigar Safari trip at the beginning of May, or the middle of May actually, we were too late to see the stuff. Everything was already chopped in the fields and everything. But Steve showed up, and it was like, hey, what are you doing down here? It's like, oh, I'm just down here hanging out. And I mean, we all knew, but I mean, he was in his position. He has to do what he has to do, and I get that. But no, I'm curious to see what he's doing with Nick Malello as well.
Yeah,
curious to see what he's bringing to the table. And there's a lot of companies that did some great stuff last year, like Warped, and I'm curious to see
another one on my list. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what they're bringing to the table. Obviously to see what's new. If we get a new blend from Willie over at Drew Estate, and I mean, there's just so much. What's new with Hoya and a lot of those. I keep naming a lot of Drew Estate and Hoya guys, but
Jose Blanco has his new one out. I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Well, he's got a couple now, right?
Yeah, Emma actually has her own stuff. I actually haven't tried, despite being in the same distribution. I haven't tried Ezra Zion's All My X's yet, so I'm real curious. Out of Noel's factory, which Noel I've worked with before. I'm intrigued that Barry Stein's Kilo, I believe, and I hope I'm not misspeaking, that I think he did that with Noel as well. And if I'm wrong, then I completely just screwed up on the show, but I thought I read something on that.
There's so much coming out right now that it's okay.
Oh, it is crazy. I've got these alerts that come in on all this stuff, and they have to go to a folder that's separate from my own stuff. And, I mean, just the last 2 weeks, I mean, you can barely keep up with all of it.
Yeah, there's a ton.
One of the unusual ones, or low-flying ones that under the radar for me, Hamlet, who is for people who go over to Cuba and enjoy Cuban cigars, he was a big roller over in Cuba. He left Cuba, went over to Miami. He joined up with Rocky Patel, and he's got his own blend under Rocky Patel. And I'm really interested to see what he's got going, because his palate is phenomenal, and what he was blending in Cuba was very, very different from what you would typically get out of a Cuban marca. Like the profile was much more Nicaraguan. So it'd be really interesting for me to see what he's doing now that he's got, obviously not Cuban tobacco, but now that he's got a whole different world of tobacco to work with, I'm really interested to see what he's come up with, and I suspect it's going to be really, really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so much good stuff out there right now. It's crazy. I'm hoping for a good show. I mean, we just released Therapy last Wednesday. We just had it and threw it out to some of our retailers, particularly since we're limiting the number of retailers. We wanted to make sure some of our key accounts made sure that they got it if they weren't at the show or something like that. And that's my first launch that's basically 3 simultaneous blends in a tray, a Connecticut, a Habano, and Maduro. So I'm really, so far the initial feedback's been really good. It's also my first, it's the first Maduro I've done. It's a Pennsylvania broadleaf, Nicaraguan filler, Nicaraguan binder, Nicaraguan Ligero. The Connecticut I've been getting good feedback on, which I didn't think I'd revisit a Connecticut so soon, but I've been playing with San Andreas for so long. I actually made the Connecticut the Connecticut cigar. It's Ecuadorian Connecticut wrapper, but it's a San Andreas binder with Nicaraguan filler. So we kind of played with something a little bit different there, for me anyway. And I'm really digging into the way it was able to, my profile in the Connecticut is not a mild Connecticut. I mean, obviously mild by virtue of all Connecticut's are typically milder. It's not a full or medium, but just something with some more flavor. And the more I've been playing with San Andreas, the more I was really digging that. So I'm excited. I'm excited to have that out and have everybody try it. A lot of people haven't had it yet, so I don't know. I mean, I'm excited to show. Like I said, I got to find a break to run around the show and hit people up and just see their new stuff. It'll be different in New Orleans because we don't really have that central location. For people listening, I mean, when we're in Vegas, I mean, basically there's a Circle Bar in the Venetian, and you pretty much know everybody's at the Circle Bar, and if they're not at that Circle Bar, they're at the other Circle Bar, which is in the other tower, or the Rum Room. So, I mean, basically those are the 3 places. So, I mean, we were trying to figure out how to basically take over Bourbon Street and hire a parade and have, like, just walk down Bourbon Street with a big brass thing behind us, and I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but we just thought that would be really fun for no reason at all.
John, we have to get the video camera ready for that, because if that does happen, there's going to be beads flying, and who knows what's going to happen with that.
Come on. How cool would it be to walk down Bourbon Street and have your own, like, funeral band behind you? I don't know that I mean, I guess they celebrate each other in funerals, but I just think that'd be cool. Just, hey, you want in the parade? Here you go, take a cigar. And especially the way New Orleans is right now, it's like I'll pay the fine, for myself. I'm not paying it for everybody, obviously. But I don't even know if there's a fine. I don't know what the deal is, but it's like, the hell with it, man. Smoke a cigar, whatever. Pay my $20, whatever the fine is, and move on. I get a kick out of New Orleans, and it's so funny because we're as scared as we are of the FDA and everything else right now, what that may be, and there's some certainly optimistic, some people being fairly optimistic about it, but it's the anti-smoking trend right now, and I get a kick out of New Orleans because I look at that city and I love that city. I love the food. I love what they are. I love the French Quarter. I love Bourbon Street to a point, but did somebody really think that, all of a sudden if they got rid of smoking, now they're going to have high-rises and condos and they're going to be like South Beach? Was that the defining line in the sand that cigars apparently were going to stop it? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, just be Vegas East, run with it, legalize everything, and just be that city and embrace it. I mean, I just can't believe that cigars was the defining factor in this.
That is funny because when you think of New Orleans, you think of them that way, where it's like it almost has kind of a Wild West kind of vibe to it. I've never been, but
oh wow, you're in for a treat. Yeah.
Oh, I'm excited. It's going to be a lot of fun. John and I and the rest of the Cigar Federation group are heading down that Thursday, so we'll have a couple of days before the show starts, and then the day the show ends, my wife is flying in, so we're going to stay through Saturday.
Oh, nice.
So
I'm actually going Sunday, so I'm going to have like a whole week to kind of kick around, and my wife will come up on Sunday as well. So nice. I'm flying from after the Outlaw events here. I'm flying on Sunday over there. So I'll get a couple days off to kind of get everything ready for the convention and things like that. But it's a neat city. I mean, you love it or hate it. There are certain aspects that are really cool, and there are certain aspects that you can't get hung up just on Bourbon Street or just the French Quarter. It's an interesting city. The food's phenomenal. It's hotter than hell, and this is from a guy that lives in Florida and Nicaragua half the year. But it's ridiculously hot. I mean, you need a change of clothes just for crossing the street. But it is a neat city.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And my wife is very excited with the food. I think we're going to be there 4 nights, and she's got like, we're somehow going to eat 13 dinners. I'm not sure how that's going to happen. But, John, when we got a guest pop in and I jump into cigar chat mode where I'm the host, and I've been taking that away from you, so I'm going to stop talking.
I should leave. I don't want to like take over your show either. I just saw this pairing, and I'm like, I totally got to at least chime in on chat, which did wrong. I was the only guy there sending a question. I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
No, it's good because it's like an after dark sharing our pairing segment, because we've essentially finished our pairing segment. So we can it's our show, so we can kind of go as long as you want to go.
Oh, so we can talk about stuff like how Jurassic World sucked, and I can't wait to see these other movies.
Hey, absolutely.
You liked it?
I did like it.
Did you see
it? It was very manufactured.
Oh, it's the second best Jurassic Park movie ever.
Sure, but that's like saying Matrix 2 was the second best Matrix film ever made.
Or like saying Star Wars: A New Hope was the second best Star Wars ever.
Right, exactly.
Or Godfather.
I gotta
beat best Godfather ever made.
The CGI was awesome, but I really felt like an 8-year-old wrote the script. But
come on! But you don't go and watch. Cigar Chat. I was gonna say Cigar Chat. You don't go watch Jurassic Park for the acting or the script. You go and watch it because it's freaking dinosaurs, and people are gonna go nuts and just kind of lose their stuff.
Okay, this is an offline conversation because I don't want to pull spoiler alert here and like.
Spoilers exactly.
But I mean, look, it's no secret they have a new dinosaur, and the dinosaur had cool traits that they did nothing with in the entire movie except like once. So.
Well, okay, I'll give you that. It wasn't the best. It wasn't the best. It's definitely not the best Jurassic Park movie. It's the second best.
So I'm just going to throw it out there. It's the only thing I'm going to say about the movie. Spoiler alert for our listeners: if you haven't watched Jurassic Park World, fast forward about 1 or 2 minutes. But of all the things that was impossible for me to suspend my disbelief was I can't remember if it was 15 years or 20 years, but I'm just going to go 15 years. A 15-year-old Jeep sitting in a tropical environment in a barn, and you're going to get it started without a fluid change. And I'm not a mechanic, but you're going to swap the battery, you're going to turn the engine over, and you're going to go. That ain't happening. Just so people know, you can't start a vehicle that's been sitting longer than like even a year, because the fluids that have been sitting in that vehicle are going to completely destroy the engine, the transmission.
Here's what you didn't see. What you didn't see when they cut away to show Bryce Dallas Howard running around in a tank top, and God bless her because she's hot.
Ew.
You didn't see them. The kids actually built a new transmission out of Legos, right? And they plugged it right in there. And you guys are no fun. You're no.
I gotta call this on John though. So seriously, Jurassic World, dinosaurs running around all over the place, and you're calling bullshit on the Jeep wouldn't start?
That's
really?
Right. the other thing that was absurd for me, and I'm just gonna go on a tangent now because now you got me wound up, because I'm a movie guy and I get wound up about movies.
It's gonna be a 2-hour show.
Yeah, it's gonna be a 2-hour show for sure. So you go to a zoo, right? And you go to an aviary in a zoo. You don't have one point of failure on an aviary. So now we're not talking about an aviary with owls or eagles or some kind of rare bird.
With flying alligators.
Flying alligators are going to eat people, and you're telling me that you've got one layer of protection between alligators eating people and not eating people. That's not how zoos are designed. Like, I get, there's money constraints and there's time constraints, but for the love of God, research how zoos work. You'd have multiple levels within that where these pterodactyls are contained within multiple levels of value. You don't just run a Jeep through and all of a sudden the pterodactyls are free. It's crazy.
Wait, that's not even how the pterodactyls got out. I thought they got out because of the. You better be fast forwarding if you want to see them. I thought that was the helicopter and the dome. The dome that was built by the lowest bidder. It was the lowest bidder, so of course it was going to fail.
That's the news to everyone out there. Don't go with the lowest bidder. When you're bidding, pick 10 bidders, go with the lowest middle bidder. The middle bidder is not going to cut corners. Anyways.
If you're building a aviary for pterodactyls, that's good. That's good advice.
That's right.
That's good advice. That's advice we can walk with.
Also, I gotta say, does anyone I've been to Disney World 2 years running, okay? Disney World. Disney World doesn't really change very much. You're telling me that a park full of dinosaurs, these are dinosaurs, is losing money because people are disinterested in dinosaurs. These are dinosaurs. There's not a kid on this planet who doesn't want to go.
Here's my retort to that.
All right.
And we've experienced that a lot here on Cigar Federation and on the different shows we've had. We can have a guest talking about their brand new release that's coming out next week. Hasn't come out yet. You know, we're smoking it. We're talking about it on the show. Maybe we do a pre-release review or whatever. But the first question we get is, so what can we look forward to next? And that cigar hasn't even come out yet. So absolutely, if Cigar World, I was going to say Cigar World, Jurassic World is existing for more than like 5 years, absolutely people are going to get bored with Tyrannosaurus Rex and although I do like the ones with the 3 horns of Triceratops. I like
Triceratops.
But if you want a good Jurassic Park experience, just read the book.
Yeah.
The book is really good.
Also, isn't it amazing how a movie that was made, I think it was 1993, still stands up? Maybe it's 1991. At any rate,
it was 93 or 92 or 93. 92 or 93.
12, 13 years, and that movie still stands up, and that is a classic example to all the movie manufacturers out there who are not listening to this podcast, that practical effects trump CGI effects any day of the week, and good scripting and good dialogue trumps and that's why Star Wars Empire Strikes Back is still the #1 Star Wars movie.
Absolutely. Not
because they did lightsabers, because they wrote a script, and if you watch the movie, there's 45 minutes of dialogue before anything happens.
And the lightsabers are cool, though. I mean, you really can't discount those. I mean,
they really are. We got to see. Fred, all you had to do to get us on a tangent was say Jurassic World sucks.
Yeah, I had no idea. It was a simple example of roads we could have went down, and apparently I picked a hot button.
Can open, worms everywhere.
Yeah. Wow.
No, I'm really excited for IPCPR, man, and it's like I fly out next week. You fly out in a couple of days. It's exciting, and there's so much going on in the industry. You said we're spoiled. We really are spoiled. I mean, at least especially over the last few years. And my own personal thought is, with all this FDA stuff on the horizon, that everybody who had anything in the pipeline was like, screw it, I'm releasing everything now. and if nothing happens with the FDA, I'll rebuild my pipeline. But I think a lot of pipelines were emptied this year, this past year. You saw so many limited releases, so many store exclusives. I mean, hell, Cigar Federation, or 3. What do we had the Buckingham, we had what else? John, you got to help me here.
Yeah, the Dojo pair off.
We had the Buckingham, and then the Throwdown, and I feel like there's another. And the racks on racks. I mean, those are 3 for Cigar Federation, for a store that's been around for a year, maybe 16 months, had 3 exclusive releases. So I'm just thinking that everybody is just clearing out that pipeline just in case. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that this year. There's going to be a ton of stuff out there. And
yeah, I think that's tough on the consumer, and it's tough to keep up with. I mean, it's forcing us to look at continually doing smaller runs, and you become brand loyal but not cigar loyal, or blend loyal, and it's an interesting trend. I mean, I can, without mentioning names, but we know who they are. There's certainly some manufacturers that put out several blends last year. But I think you're starting to see a brand loyal, not blend loyal type of thing happening, which puts a lot of pressure on the blends. It puts a lot of pressure on production schedules. Sure. It adds expense, because if you're doing small runs and you're still doing UPCs and you're still doing bands and everything else, the boxes, that's going to be the same no matter what you do. You just deal with that. But if I'm doing bands for a specific line, or UPCs or anything like that, I mean, I don't really get to. I mean, obviously there's still money in it, but you really start to realize more money incrementally when you print enough bands for several runs, and all of a sudden you're doing a one-off run. You start to increase, what might be 20 cents a cigar towards that kind of stuff might all of a sudden become 50 or 70 cents because you're doing such smaller runs that you're not going to be able to reuse those bands as you continue to produce that cigar. So that puts a lot of pressure on it. The consumers, I don't know if they like that or not. I don't know if they're the vocal majority or if they're the vocal minority as far as people that are jumping around, blend to blend. But that'll be a big discussion among manufacturers, I know, this year, because we've all talked about it initially, how to respond to that pressure. And every time you see somebody else come out with another blend that you feel that they've already done too many blends that year, like, holy crap, what do I got to do? My blend's 8 months old, and I'm old news because someone else has already released 4 blends since then. It used to be a big deal when you just did another size in an existing blend. So I don't know. I'm really looking real hard at what my model is and how Nomad's fortunately kept growing, but I'm going to run into that problem in a real hurry because of the pressure of everybody else putting out as many cigars as they are.
And I think there was a really great comment from Omar last week on Cigar Chat where he said, there's a lot of backlash between companies releasing small batch or LE lines, and he said, look, any way you want to look at it, every cigar is a limited release. There's only a certain amount of tobacco available for a particular size or a particular year, and once you run out of that, it's gone. Like, you can try and make the blend as close as you want with the next year batch, but it's not the same.
Yeah, and I think when you have a manufacturer, or excuse me, when you have a retailer that says, hey, I'm going to bring in, let's just say 10 cigars that year, and I'm just making up the number. Some are obviously, way higher. Some are probably, a smaller shop. That's probably in line. They're looking at maybe 10 new lines that they play. Let's say 1 a month. Let's say 12. But when they know that they have a brand owner that they like, and that brand owner comes up with, say, 4 that year, they're going to bring in those 4. Well, there's a lot less space, and there's a lot less room to bring in brands that are trying to grow. Like myself. It's an odd hurdle because I'll have some retailers that go, man, I've heard your stuff, I've read their reviews, I love them. It's just I picked up these 3 new lines from XYZ this year, and I picked up this, and so it's getting a little bit difficult for the startups to combat that or to stand out, which is kind of why I started doing like the blending seminars and stuff, was to kind of get in there and have a value added that went along with it. Because my hurdle now really, having a full portfolio, as of the therapy line, I'll have 8 full production lines.
Wow.
And that's within a 3-year period. I don't know that you can churn out much more than that unless you're certainly experienced in the industry and been around a while. So I don't really have a lot more other than some other stuff I'm playing with. This is what I've got, and I've hopefully got something for everybody. But my hurdle is getting people to try it. Once the consumers try it, there's something typically in my line that works for them that they really like, and they can work into their cycle of cigars. But the new stuff. And I also don't know how I feel about it as a consumer, because for me, I typically had 3/4 of my line, or 3/4 of my humidor would be kind of my go-to, say 6 sticks to 8 sticks, and that core line of what I smoke, forgetting about my own stuff, has diminished, not because I don't want to have the familiar stick that I go to, but because availability. Because everybody's flipping through some stuff, and I don't know how I feel about that as a consumer either.
Go ahead.
Sorry, John, I didn't mean to cut you off. One thing I'll say, as far as like all the additional releases and the limited stuff, the chatter that I see on Cigar Federation, and I'm going to keep, when I make blanket statements in this type of conversation, I'm referring to Cigar Federation because that's a community that I really focus on. And the excitement level for new releases is high. Everybody wants to try what's next. And like I said earlier, you have the therapy. Let's say this is a Cigar Federation show or a cigar chat show. Somebody's going to be asking what's coming next. Always somebody's always going to ask that.
Yep.
So people want whatever's new. So whether it's if it's a limited edition, then it's a little bit sexier, right? Because I need to go out and get it now. And I'll reference like the racks on racks, and that's one of the lost and found type situations where that cigar was rolled whenever it was rolled, and only X amount of them exist. So when it's gone, it's gone. So, in a way, I feel like the top percentile of the cigar smoker, like the younger cigar smoker, like the guys who focus in on shows like this and are active on social media and things, they're really interested in that stuff. And to add a core line that I know is going to be around for a long time isn't really as sexy. But what you're doing with Nomad, you haven't really done any limited releases outside of not
for 2 years ago.
Yeah, and was it 1386?
Yeah.
And I think I was the only person, and I'll say it with you here, I was the only person in the world who didn't like that cigar.
Yeah.
I don't know, there was something about that cigar.
I love that cigar so much.
Everybody loved it.
Loved it.
I mean, it was a miss for me, but it just didn't hit my palate, and that's fine.
Right.
But you're being successful, and your brand is growing based on core releases. So that
That's a good point.
There's something there that you're doing right that is it's successful, and your audience is gravitating towards. And I think in the end, it's the quality of the cigar that people want.
Yeah.
Whether it's a core line or it's a limited edition or whatever the case may be. Maybe there's only 1,000 of them. Maybe it's going to be the cigar that you have thought in advance and you've purchased enough tobacco to roll the cigar for 10 years.
Right.
As long as the cigar has that quality, people are going to come back to it. And I think that or at least this is my own personal feeling, that the cigar industry is going to regulate. It's just like any other industry, like the housing industry or whatever. It's going to plateau at the point where it's, okay, I've had enough limited releases, and I'm a little bit sick of it from a consumer standpoint, and I'm speaking in generalities. And it's going to come back to who is making the cigars that are available all the time. They come out every year. Maybe every year they do a specific release or whatever, but the quality is consistent, and that blend is consistent. And I know every time I pick up an S-307 that it's going to be a fantastic cigar.
Nice callback.
And everyone's going to – that's what we're smoking, right?
Yep.
That's good. Because, man, I'm telling you, I've had all of these cocktails, and I'm really impressed with myself that I'm really having a cogent thought at this point.
Where do you think you are?
At least I think I am. I'll listen back and think, wow, what was I doing? But I think that's the kind of thing that's we're going to get back to that brand loyalty again, like you were talking about. And it's going to be brand loyalty to specific releases, because there's cigars out there that are coming out and they're great, but I'm never going to see them again, so why do I care? If I can't get my hands on it, so what? Everybody else loved it, but it's gone, so I'm going to go back to the Padron 64 anniversary that I can get every year, and I know it's great. Do you know what I'm saying?
I agree, and I think that's a really good point. I think that, it used to be when there was an LE, there was only a couple of them out there, you got to get a hold of them. Now everything, they're kind of like pseudo-LEs. They're not saying they're LEs, but they're saying they're limited releases, which is essentially the same thing. Yep. It's not a full production cigar until such time you decide not to produce it. And I think there's a burnout there. And I also think, and I'm going to say this as a consumer, I think we're getting close to a ceiling of outright uniqueness in the blends that, let's just say that there's 100 blends that come out. I could probably lose 50 of those blends as a consumer and be just as happy with the cigars that I had, because look, I know more than I knew then, obviously, and I know that yes, you can tweak it, but there is a finite amount of tobacco. There's not a lot of great tobacco. There's a lot of good tobacco, so you have to make sure you're getting a hold of the great tobacco and doing everything right. But a lot of these cigars I've liked, but I can't say they've been like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever, that when it disappears, I'm like all bummed out about it. There were legitimate LEs 5 years ago that I'm like, wow, it's going to suck if this one's not available. There are legitimate cigars that I've had in runs that last year's Las Calaveras I thought was a fabulous cigar. I have some of it in my humidor because I was bummed that it was going away. Now I'm excited to see that they're actually going to produce it under the other name, and that blend, as I understand it, I think that's what they're doing. You guys probably are more in touch with that than I do. But generally, I'm going through all these cigars, and I just feel that I don't want to say saturated, but I think we're getting to the point that we're saturated, that there's just so many blends. Like, yeah, that was good, but there's these 50 other ones that are good also, and it's like, how many of these do we really need?
Yeah,
I think the risk is, and I see like I call it the rock band effect. So you know, what happens is, and I'm not going to name any manufacturers, but you come out with, say, 15 blends in a year thinking, well, I'll have a blend for every single pallet out there. And the problem is that, like Rob was talking about, everyone's looking for something new, and eventually they just get tired of your line because there's too much to choose from. You know, and I think one of the things that you've done as a company is you're not coming out with a new blend every 3 months. You're coming out with a new blend every 11 months, every year. And, you know, I think there is a risk long term to some of the bigger manufacturers where if you come out with 3 or 4 releases every 6 months, you're going to saturate your market, their brand loyalty, to a point where people say, I don't even know what to smoke anymore because there's just too much in your line to choose from that I can't choose anymore. I call it the rock band effect because I feel like that's how the rock band killed the sort of instrument gaming industry, is they just saturated the market with so much choice, people couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, I think that, I won't name names either because, you know, look, I respect everybody for what they've done in the industry, and I don't care what anybody smokes, but I think you can take a manufacturer that has, you know, and I'm going to say, you know, let's just say 30, 40 blends or whatever it is, and let's say there's a retailer that has all 30 or 40 of those blends. Odds are that I'm a firm believer that that retailer could cut half of that entire line and sell just as many cigars of that particular manufacturer as they did before. Maybe you got to bring in a one-off or something like that, but I think what the portfolio gets so big that at some point, like you just said, you know, John, you're robbing your own audience out of there, as opposed to come up with, you know, I think you need, I don't know what the number is, but I think that you need probably somewhere, you know, about two to three of each type of profile smoker, which puts you well under 10 blends, under 12 blends, to cover the gambit, make those cigars, make them well, and then leave it at that. You know, if you're into infused stuff, that's different, because now you're talking different flavors, different nuances. The barrel stuff that's going on now is very different. That's a different animal. But if you're talking about outright cigars, and I'm a medium smoker, then there's you know 3 to 4 different type of styles within that category that as a manufacturer you should like. That puts you at 12 on a mild, medium, full. That should be enough to sustain your company and have a portfolio and to build a reputation on. But the pressure to put out a lot of them right now and constantly in the news and what's next, I agree with you, Robbie. I think that you're going to start to see some pushback. I don't think that when someone misses out on an LE anymore, your average consumer, I don't think they're as bummed of it, because you know what? They're going, you know what? There's going to be another one in 5 minutes anyway.
Exactly. I'd be curious to see. We've got a bunch of listeners. It's funny. Our listenership, and I can see the number of folks listening live has like tripled since you joined us. And the chat room on Cigar Federation has been blowing up too.
It's probably Jurassic Park. It's the Jurassic World.
It was the Jurassic Park. You're right. No, as soon as we started talking about dinosaurs. No, and we do appreciate you joining in and being real candid with us. It's you know, it's an unexpected treat, but it's a lot of fun to chat with you. It always has been. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think that there's a lot of different things at play here as far as limited editions and things like that. I think the growth of social media and the growth of this industry accepting social media has really impacted the number of releases that are coming out. I mean, some companies will tell you. I mean, we listen to things that people say on social media, and we've tweaked blends and come out and developed new blends because of things that we've heard on social media. Some companies won't say that, but you know, I think that there's got to be that point where everything starts to come back around to what really works. And what has worked for the last 100 years for this industry is, you know, brand names, brands coming out with core releases that are going to be available on a regular basis and have, like you said, consistently good, consistently well constructed. You started with, you know, your Dominican blend, which that's still your original blend is still it's probably my second favorite release that you've had. The C276 is my favorite. That was the one that came out last year. That's a phenomenal cigar. The S-307s right up there as well. So what you're doing is you're consistently coming out with new blends that are consistently good. And I'm very excited, and I was remiss to not mention this earlier, and it would have just sounded like I was pandering to you a little bit, because I am really excited to check out this therapy line. And it's a little bit of a it's a bit of a step from what you've done in the past, but it's, you know, you have to get involved with your demographic and what people are looking for, and you're taking, you know, 3 releases. It's the first time you've done that, and I'm excited to check it out. I'm really excited to see what you did with this Connecticut, because your last Connecticut was so fantastic, and it was very well received. Probably one of the best received Connecticut's that I've ever been around for over the last few years.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
it was
that's
it was maddening, but it went the way I wanted, despite a couple retailers telling me, don't do that cigar, you'll never sell it, and I'm glad they were wrong. But I think you do what you want to do, and then you hope it works out. Obviously, you listen to guidance of other people, but I was happy with the track we were on, and I had no plans for another Connecticut. Matter of fact, initially therapy was going to be 2. And because we were stumbling on something different, I was actually happy with it, and I didn't expect that. You know, and the idea on the therapy wasn't anything really more than could I have 2 blends? It became 3, but get away from the box cost and get in a tray, and you know, it sounds like a cheesy, you know, car dealer going, hey, we're passing on the price to the consumer, but we were. I mean, you know, when you look at roughly 35 cents a stick is going towards a box. By doing a tray, I'm able to lower the cost across the board, but still have premium long fill, not do any short fill, medium fill, Cuban sandwich type stuff, and get it to the price that doesn't jeopardize the rest of the line, but gives a little bit more of a value-oriented introduction to the Nomad line, and, you know, shelf space and boxes and all the other stuff. It works out pretty good.
And you know, that's the kind of thing that when I was, you know,
yeah, and I think.
Oh, sorry, John, go ahead. We get crossed up.
I was going to say, you know, we it's all good. I'll be quick. It's important to talk about when we do. Ultimately, to most consumers out there, price, and I think if you can deliver a great $2 less, than
he's getting a little choppy there.
You are way choppy, John. You are so choppy right now. We have no idea. I thought you brought something up from the Matrix again. I'm not sure exactly what you said.
Yeah, that Canadian internet, man. I mean, they get sketchy.
Well, it's like we're like on a gig, and with the exchange rate, they're like 256 dial-up. So I'm not sure what the exchange rate is on internet right now with the Canadians. So.
I think what happened there is my TV shows for the Thursday evening just kicked in, and it's I am watching multiple TV shows. It's my Thursday sci-fi night, so I've got 3 shows on Netflix coming down. Is that coming through for you?
It's good. Yeah, we got you.
Okay. So
I want to know what the 3 shows are too. This is going to be awfully telling, but go ahead, finish your thought.
So Thursday night is sci-fi night. So you've got Dark Matter. You've got Defiance, and you've got not Free Jacks. Boy, I forget the name of it. Anyways, Sci-Fi Night is Thursday night. You got 3 shows back to back, and so this is my Netflix night. So I had to go in and remotely toggle that off to make sure it wasn't eating up my bandwidth. That's what was going on there. At any rate, what I was talking about is when we do reviews, we are really cognizant about making sure we don't necessarily talk about price, but ultimately, when we talk about our consumers, there's a lot of consumers out there that are driven by price. Even SigFed members out there are making decisions based on price. So if you take a boutique cigar, like a lot of the Nomads are priced at a point where you would not expect them to be priced at, where they're $2, $2.50 below what, you know, if you smoke the cigar, and I think this might be something fun we do in the future where we say, smoke a cigar and don't look at the MSRP and say, how much do I think this cigar is going for in the market? And I say, well, this is like this S-307. This is a $9.30 cigar. There's no question in my mind this is a $9.30 cigar, but it's not. It's not going for that in the marketplace. So to your point of reducing the price eventually that gets down to the consumer, I think it is really, really important, because there absolutely is consumers that say, $8 is my cutoff, or $7 and whatever is my cutoff, and I'm not going to buy something regardless of what I read beyond that price point.
Yeah, nobody likes to talk about the value issue of it and what's it worth, but I mean, as a consumer and going in there and spending your own money, it's a consideration. I mean, there's the magic number of below 10. There's the magic number below 8. There's the number that if you're going to go in there and you're going to play at the $15 range, then 15 to 20, then you've got some real good cigars in that I think own that price point for the most part. That are you as good as XYZ?
Yeah.
So I think the value thing is important. I don't think it. I mean, if I'm smoking a cigar that's $8 and I'm smoking a cigar that's $20, the cigars have to be good in their own right. But there's always a percentage there that says, you know what, I got this cigar for $6. It's like, man, can you find me a better $6 cigar? Whoever, whatever it is, and it's like, well, no, I can't.
Yep.
Then the value comes into play. Same thing with beers, same thing with wines. I mean, it's like, I drink a lot of wine, and they'll say, hey, I got a great bottle of wine for $50, but if you can give me a great bottle of wine for $15, I know it's not going to be as good as the 50, but you know what? It's pretty damn good, and I'll buy it all day long at 15 because I think it's worth the value there. So it's a subject that I think manufacturers don't like to hear. But there's definitely a value issue in the smoke, and what I put up for something, not a $20 cigar caliber, but I'm getting it for $6. Yeah, I mean, now there's certain things for me have to be there. I don't want tobacco that's not aged at all, that's under 2 years or 3 years. I don't want construction issues. I don't want things like that. But that being aside, you take somebody like AJ Fernandez's New World. You take Illusion's Rothschild or something like that at that price point. I don't think there's better cigars at that price point, and I think that to me that weighs in that consideration.
I'm gonna jump in. I stepped away for a second while you guys were talking, so I may be repeating myself. But you're talking about price point, and I'm gonna reference the Cigar Federation store, which again we have no affiliation with. The show does, and I'm looking. They have. At least this is what I think they have in stock. The C276 starts at $8.50. I'm not sure if that's in stock. The Nomad Classic, which is the Dominican blend, one of my favorites, starts at $7.75. The Esteli Lot 8613 starts at $7.67. The S-307 starts at $7.20, and the Connecticut starts at $7.90. I mean, that's where they start. So I'm assuming those are you're talking about. Robustos. I'm not sure what they have in stock. I just pulled up real quick just to look. But when you're talking about price point, I mean, that's the price point you want to be at, right?
Yeah.
I mean, from a standpoint of a consumer, that's the price point I want to be in. And for the quality that you're delivering at that price point, I mean, what was the price point on? We smoked a 307 tonight, and where's that at? So it starts at $7.20 for the Corona. And I would love to smoke in that Corona size. I think I smoked a Robusto. That Corona size, it's at $7.20 a stick. Forget about it. I mean, that's hard to beat.
I think that was a conscious effort by me, though. But to be honest, I mean, my margins, and I talk to a lot of other manufacturers, particularly ones that are my size or a little bigger. I know my margins, as far as what I personally make, are less, and in some cases considerably less than other guys make. It's not because of not having good access to tobacco. It's because I knew where I needed to be price point to start a company. So, as it progresses, I was either going to build a company or not, but I didn't want price to be the barrier. So, the C276 is a perfect example of a cigar that really could be, or I don't know, say could be or should be, a much higher price. I know what I pay for that tobacco. I know what I cut my margins down to. But I was either going to build a brand or not, and I wasn't going to have sacrifice. I didn't want to go, well, if I just use this tobacco a little less aged, I can make money. I didn't do that. I put them out to make sure I made the cigar I wanted to make. Hopefully the money comes along the way as far as volume and does there. But I would say, with the most part, the line is probably easily 50 cents to 75 cents less a stick than it probably could be at this point now that I've built it. But the market's the market, and I had to deal with it. And if I was at that price point, I don't know if I would have got as much attention for people to even try the cigar.
Now, it's funny that you mentioned the C276. Now, we talked about that a little bit earlier in our show, and John, I'm taking over again, so I apologize. But we did that as part of a group review, and I know that both made it into my top 10 for last year of new releases, and I think it was in yours as well. And I'm looking at, and again, I'm referencing Cigar Federation Cigar Federation store prices. The 5-pack of the Corona, which is a 5.5 by 46, which is a fantastic size of a cigar, was $42. For the amount that cigar delivers, that's a fantastic price.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And that's just, I mean, from a consumer, I respect that, and I respect the way that you're talking about it. You're speaking about it with a lot of candor that most people really wouldn't. So you can, if you're listening, and we know that you are in Germany and Norway and around the world. I mean, you're getting kind of a little bit of insight here. This is a lot of fun. I mean, I've had a few drinks. I know John has had a few drinks. I'm probably speaking a little bit more out of turn than John is, but that's all right. We also had I know we've had some questions here from the audience. Since you've chimed in, we've had some questions. John, you want to jump in with some of those?
Yeah, so, I kind of want to talk about this earlier because we were talking about core blends and, focusing on core blends. And Rob and I commented on some of the previous shows that we've seen and we're going to call it coincidental because we're certainly not the brainchild of the industry, but we've seen this parallel rise of cigars for blending right at the same time or just after we launched the show, where all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we've got all these core lines from other companies that are coming out to be blended with, are paired with beverages and beers and whiskey and whatever. So one of our audience members, Bob Dog, is asking, down the road, do you see yourself coming out with a cigar line specifically designed and blended to be paired with whatever, whether that's whiskey or bourbon or beer or whatever?
It's a good question. I don't. I think that it's to me it's very limiting, particularly at my level. I think if I had 30 blends out there and I'm looking for what is essentially a weird type of LE, you're saying, hey, I did this little cigar for this little pairing type thing. I think for me, I have to cast broader strokes. And say, hey, here's a cigar, here's what I found that it paired with. But to do something specific, that would be no different than me doing a one-off LE that, maybe if I drink a lot of Oban or something like that, if Oban came to me and says, hey, do you want to do a cigar for us? That's a little different, but it would be under an LE environment. A lot of my cigars, especially the 307, C276, pair great with single malts and a wide variety of single malts. So to do one specific in there, I'm just not prepared to jump on that bandwagon at this point, and I don't really foresee doing that. If I do that, you can certainly play back this part of the tape later at another show and go, hey, we want to remind you this. I just don't see. That's not where my heart is. I like the cigars to stand by themselves. I get it, and I get why some guys do it, and I certainly understand the passion behind it. But for me personally, just not a direction I'm looking at going at.
All right, John, I gleaned two things from that. One, we need to do a peated Scotch show featuring some of the Nomad releases.
Hell yeah.
We'll include Oban. And
we'll do research in New Orleans.
Exactly. Well, okay, three things. Okay, we'll do some research in New Orleans. So that's part number two. And then we need to get the Oban folks on the line and make this happen, because I would love to see that cigar. The Nomad Oban barrel aged, or whatever the hell you want to call it. Yeah. I would love to see that cigar. And Oban is I've got Oban 14 year, I think, in my I think that's their baseline is 14 year. Right? That was a gift from my wife, and I've got that in my bar. A couple other questions, and again, Fred, I know I say this a lot whenever we have you on the show and whenever we get a chance to talk to you. I really do appreciate your candor in the way that you answer questions. No, I mean seriously, and it's not to say that other people don't offer that as well, but maybe that's something that I understand and that John understands. But maybe it's the guy who just goes out and buys your product, and maybe they don't understand what bands cost and what box adds to the cost, or things like that, or that what your goal as a company is. It's a unique insight. I mean, it's commonplace to you because you think about it all the time, but it's not necessarily commonplace to our viewers. So I really do appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, like in the very beginning, it was like I'm gonna tell everybody what I did right and tell everybody what I did wrong, and it doesn't need to be a big secret. I mean, we're all dealing with the same thing. So it's been a fun process, and I enjoy sharing the information on it.
I think we could actually quote you from the first show that we had you on Cigar Chat, where you may have actually said that.
I probably did.
Something right along those lines. Another question here, and we'll have to wrap this up eventually because we're creeping on a 2-hour show at this point. This one's from Gordon Tweed. He's got a couple of questions, and actually no, it's the same question. He's asked it a few times. He says, "How do you keep things fresh? Where do you get your ideas? And I'll paraphrase what I think he's asking is when you're looking at a new blend, when you go from the C276 to the 307, what dictates the type of blend that you come up with? Is it tobacco that's available, or do you have a particular idea in mind that you want to add to your portfolio to gain new customers? How does that really work? It's different for everybody, so I think it's a genuine question to ask at this point.
I think for me it's a great question. I mean, certainly when I did the LE, that was stumbling on some unique tobacco that was a fact finding. It's probably even a better question for me a year from now. But I would say that right now is I look at my palate and I look at what am I in the mood for. And so take away the C276 out of the equation from last year. Had a big meal, had some drinks, had a steak. What cigar did I want to smoke? And I'd go to the humidor, and I've got 4 towers in my house, and I'm grabbing cigars after that meal that are not one of my cigars because I want this flavor profile, and it's not one of my cigars. So in the beginning in building a company, that part becomes pretty easy to me because it's like, hey, I'm on the golf course. What do I want to smoke on a golf course? Well, I'd smoke the classic line, but sometimes I wanted something different, so the Connecticut's kind of born out of that. Or the Sumatra was a perfect example of that. Or the new therapy, the Pennsylvania broadleaf and the Maduro is an example of that. So for me, there are gaps, and if I was to say, okay, I'm stranded in a desert island and I could only have my portfolio, am I going to miss a profile at some point during the day or after some sort of meal that I want that I have to go to another guy's stick or another manufacturer's cigar for? And so for me, that's where it is right now. The 8613, which was the last one that I put out this year, earlier in the year, I wanted a rustic style blending focusing on Jalapa, Condega, and Ometepe. I didn't have that personally. There were certainly other cigars I smoked, and I'm not going to mention them, but I liked that I went to, and I'm like, you know what? I want to have that for me, and I want to go create that for me, and that's what I've done this far. Going forward, I've been playing with, for over a year and a half, I've been playing with San Andreas, and so the next one will probably be a San Andreas wrapper. I'm actually real close on it. Really like 2 blends that I've perfected over the last year, so I'm trying to figure out what the best one to go with is. So that's what it is. I'm looking for what am I missing in my own portfolio that I really like to smoke, and not to duplicate somebody else's, just to say in that wheelhouse, and how would I make that my own?
Awesome. That's another great answer. Again, I feel like I might be pandering a little bit, but I mean, Fred, we've known each other for what?
You know me. I've been in the business none at all. You have no pandering necessary. Nobody knows who I am.
We've known each other. We've known each other for a few years now, and and when I say known each other, I mean tangentially, right, through the business.
I don't even know what that word means. I need a thesaurus.
I use tangentially a lot in juxtaposition too, so look them up. But and I never took the SATs. Story for another time. But what I mean is we've shared time as far as cigar smokers, cigar enjoyers, and I know I've been talking with you about a lot of your blends, and we'll spend some time in New Orleans, I hope. I love the way that you answer questions, and it's refreshing in a way that I mean you actually answer the question.
I actually didn't. It's funny because when I started, and it was a thing in the beginning, I watched all these interviews with different manufacturers, and I always felt like with some of them, not all by any means, but a lot of them, I felt like the PR department wrote their answer for them, as opposed to just answer the question as honestly and openly as you can, and it's really not that hard to do. There's not an agenda. If someone asks me a question that I can't outright answer, then I'm going to tell you that I can't answer that, or whatever. But bottom line is that you're the reason shows like this are good, and the reason that I think helps with my brand is that I've been so open about it. If you ask me a straight up question, I'm not going to tell you what cigars that I don't like. I'm not going to tell you what manufacturers I think are total jerks. I'm not going to tell you that kind of stuff because it's not appropriate, and I wouldn't want them to do it if they thought that of me. But beyond that, heck, I don't care. I'll answer anything. Yeah. I mean, I'm like the guy that got lucky enough to go make cigars, and I know there's a million other guys that wish they could do it. So if they can enjoy my journey in the process, man, more power to them.
That's what's refreshing about it. And you've said that since day one. I mean, you're learning the process of tobacco the same way a lot of guys are. Well, not the same way. You're learning it in a more hands-on way, and you're invested financially. You're invested with your time, to do that kind of thing. And it's. I mean, you're in a position that a lot of guys would love to be in, like you said. But it's just nice to have you. I mean, even when I remember, I gleaned back to a few of the information or a few of the shows that we had on you before, with you on before. You've been on Cigar Chat several times, and you've talked about there's a lot of things about tobacco that I'm learning. I mean, you're working, like you were just saying, you're working with San Andreas, and if you need someone to sample some of those San Andreas, I know a bunch of guys will be very interested.
I could arrange that. I could arrange that.
Given some feedback. I mean, myself, Logan loves the San Andreas. So does John. I know there's I could probably think of about 10 or 15 Cigar Federation members that would be very interested in giving you their feedback.
If it's next week, I better get you on a fresh palate because God knows we smoke a lot of cigars.
Oh man, yeah. Let's pull it back to next week because we started this conversation with what are you excited about seeing, and I think we've talked about it for about an hour, and there's so much to be excited about. There's a lot of stuff to be, you can be skeptical about it or you can be jaded about it if you want, but this isn't the type of industry for that if you ask me, as a consumer, as a guy who gets to smoke. I'm blessed, I'm lucky, whatever word you want to use, I get to smoke all kinds of cigars. And I don't really have go-to cigars at this point because I'm always smoking something new because I have a review or I've got a show coming up and I talk about it. And I'm not complaining by any means. I'm happy to be in the position that I am. I don't know that I can answer some of these questions as a general consumer, but there's so much that's coming out. It's going to be a great show. I'm really excited to visit New Orleans. Looking forward to hanging out with you. I mean, there's a list of people that I'm looking forward to hanging out with, and you're definitely close to the top of it. So
yeah, if they don't make it, then yeah, come hang out with me.
No, you missed the part where I said you're right up at the top of that list.
Yeah. There's a lot of famous people nobody knows also. So.
Well, let's just put it this way: we decided to focus on your cigar today for a reason.
I appreciate that. I mean, look, you guys have a lot of choices of what to do, and I actually saw the thing go out on the pairing, which is why I actually was over at Outlaw hanging out with the guys. I'm like, I want to get back and at least jump on the chat. I didn't plan on getting on the show. I was just lounging around the hotel naked, and then that got creepy. So I'm just kidding. But I wanted to at least jump on the chat and say thanks, and this actually turned out. Hopefully, we didn't derail the show or whatever. But I love talking to you guys. I mean, look, you guys are the reason that boutiques are even able to get their names out there for guys to try, because we don't have thousands and thousands of dollars to spend on swag and make it rain when you walk in the store. We don't have the thousands of dollars to put in big ads and stuff like that you can buy your way into a little bit of attention and stuff like that. So it's honestly shows like this and a lot of what SigFed does and stuff like that really gives us a chance, and that's all I really wanted was a chance. So I really appreciate what you guys do.
Thank you.
And I'm not pandering.
Well, pandering is the right term to use there, right?
I know that word, yes.
Okay, good.
I'm not a complete
I just want to make, because I used it several times. I want to make sure this. Now, I had 4.5 full cocktails. So
you're pretty good. You are New Orleans prepared.
I'm in, dude.
4.5 cocktails, and you're probably doing better than I would be.
It's going to be good. And now at some point, I need to get your cell phone so you can tell me where the Circle Bar is. And the funny thing about Vegas is none of those bars are actually called the Circle Bar.
No, and actually the Circle Bar in Vegas is actually an octagon, which kind of pisses me off, but as the OCD part of me. But yeah, you're right. It's not. I don't think it's called the Circle Bar at all.
The OCD part is why you didn't like Jurassic Park 2. So I brought it all back to the beginning. I'm gonna let John finish this out because I've jumped in and I got into the cigar chat roll, John. I'm sorry.
No. It's, Fred, we appreciate you popping in, and you know what? We're definitely going to have you on again after IPCPR for a full Sharing Our Pairing show.
With some Oberon.
As we sort of wrap it up, one of the things I want to throw out and maybe potentially get credit for if it shows up in the industry is last year and the year before we saw some Kentucky Fire cured tobacco. What I would like to see is peat fire cured tobacco, and I'm just going to throw that out there for people who are willing to experiment. Peat fire cured tobacco would be very, very interesting. You could tie it back to the whiskey industry. I think the whiskey industry would be interested to play in that market. It could be interesting, but talking about next week in the IPCPR, of course, Cigar Federation is going to be covering that. We're going to have some live shows as we wrap up the event every day. We're going to make sure to tie in our podcast listeners. We're going to have some videos every day, but we're also going to tie that back to our podcast listeners so you guys can listen to the content. We're going to take those videos and those interviews that are top for the day. We're going to turn those into podcasts so you guys can tune in and listen to that. I just want to say thanks very much, Fred, for taking the time to pop into the show. I know you're really, really busy, and we do appreciate you popping in and taking more than an hour now to jump on the show and share your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's a lot of fun, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks for tuning in. I mean, our live viewership went up, and there was a lot of. Bob Dog's telling me I got to hit up Acme's. Is there a place called Acme?
There's a new cigar line, Acme. Yeah.
Well, there's a new cigar line. We're actually.
He's talking about the oyster place. He's talking about
the oyster place.
Yeah. Acme, and I always go to Felix's. So
Felix's.
Yeah, Felix is right around the corner. A little more divey, a little more sketch as far as health code, but delicious.
It's funny that you reference Acme as the cigar company because we have them on Cigar Chat tomorrow.
Well, I was trying to tie it all in for everybody there, and then you were dialed in. No, I think he's talking about this. You know, you're drunk, so someone else has got to make the show keep moving here.
No, you're dialed in, man. No, so definitely tomorrow we're gonna have Acme Cigar Company, which is a sister company of AKA Cigars. So we'll have Jay Lundy. Not sure if Tom's gonna be joining us or not. But I know Logan and I both have some samples that we'll be smoking to talk about. We're going to give away some stuff, so everybody tune in tomorrow for sure. But that's not what we're. It's just a nice little tie-in. So thank you for that, Fred. John, you got to wrap this up, man. This is your show.
Yeah, you betcha. So we've had to bump, unfortunately, Twin Engine Coffee because we've got some sample days coming up to us. But hopefully we can get Twin Engine on the show in the coming weeks. Apologies to Twin Engine for the delay. Again, to our listeners, make sure to tune into our IPCPR coverage coming live next week. We're going to have podcast coverage. We're going to have crazy, crazy video coverage. So check out our YouTube channel for that. And check out the Cigar Federation website. We're going to have tons of reviews. There's going to be information overload. Thanks very much for those who have stuck in for the last 2 hours and 10 minutes. We saw you guys absolutely skyrocket at the 55-minute mark, so that was pretty exciting. But thanks very much for tuning in, and as we always say on the show, maybe we didn't practice tonight, but we want you guys to drink better and drink less.